Hello
I
and
think so too.
hello and welcome to a Paratrooper and a Yogi walk into a bar. We're in our metaphysical bar this evening rather than the practical bar because we're trying this live because it worked quite well last time. So we're going to give this another go. Hopefully, technology will not defeat us and this will go okay. My name's Andrew Fox and I'm with the amazing Shana Meyerson, who has overused her middle finger this week, and you'll see is thoroughly bandaged. But that doesn't stop her being the host of the Yoga of War podcast.
Let me just say, it's not what you think. Okay, it's those one-handed handstands. They get to you after a while. I don't know what you were thinking, Andrew, but there are other ways to sprain a middle finger.
Well,
Anyway.
I just thought you were taking the fight of anti-Semitism very, very literally and practically.
Well,
Just
I
at
actually
the nearest pro-Palestine rally. Just
I'm still way too much of a lady to sprain my middle finger that way. So that being said, welcome. I just and there he is, my paratrooper partner. See what I did there?
very good, very good.
No, I know. Yeah. Okay. Well, whatever.
It's not just your middle finger you've sprained, is it?
Yeah, that's Mr. Andrew Fox on Substack and X. So, Mr. Andrew Fox, you're on. You're starting us off today. What are we talking about today?
We are talking about potential ceasefires in Gaza. And it's something that we've been around this boy a number of times, haven't we? Right back to sort of last summer, there were discussions about ceasefires. And then, of course, President Trump came in and enforced his ceasefire, which, for all its flaws, did bring home a number of hostages. And so we can consider that a real triumph in that respect. And also, it didn't stop Israel from restarting the war when Hamas started failing to play the game and continue the negotiations as they were supposed to. This one kind of feels a bit different, though. It feels different to me. And the reason it feels different, I think, is that it comes in the context of the 12-day war against Iran. I don't know if that's going to be the official name of the war, but I think 12-day war does for now, at least to clarify what we're talking about.
Yeah, it sure seems to be sticking.
So your audio is sticking, or the
is my audio still sticking?
Nah, your video is, but it's all good. As long as we can hear you, we're fine. And look, I don't think 12... Actually, as an aside, I'm just going to go off on a very little tangent here. I don't think 12-day war works because the biggest flaw of most commentators on this conflict is they see each front as a separate war. They see the Hezbollah thing as different to the Syria thing, different to the Gaza thing, to the Houthi thing, to the Iran thing. And we need to keep reminding ourselves that actually this is just one conflict. It's all of it one conflict, and all of it starts and ends with Iran. But
what's more, Andrew, I don't think that because there were 12 consecutive days of strikes, that means that war is over. I think the 12-day war can go on for months or years, but the first push was 12 days.
Yeah, and I think we're still seeing mysterious drone strikes and explosions in Tehran, aren't we? So there's definitely shenanigans still going on.
Yeah, nobody could account for those. Totally mysterious.
Can't imagine where those are coming from. But yeah, so the ceasefire itself, it's that standard Witkoff deal. Steve Witkoff, US envoy, it's the 60-day ceasefire in exchange for some hostages released and some Palestinian prisoners released from Israel. There's a couple of things that alarm me on this one. The first one is that actually it doesn't really solve anything. There's nothing enduring here. And it basically takes all the really difficult issues about what happens with Hamas, what happens after the war, what does reconstruction look like, who runs Gaza. It just takes them and it kicks them into the long grass and gives us no solution. It takes us no further to a permanent ceasefire. And it comes hand in hand for me as well with a real danger that actually the 60-day ceasefire will be extended and extended and extended with no resolution. And that's a real problem as well, because what you're effectively doing is leaving Hamas in charge if you do that.
I agree, Andrew, except for one thing. Like, honestly, I don't know why they keep like just putting a lipstick on this pig. It's honestly the same proposal over and over and over again. So last time there was also this pathway to unlimited talk, literally like the ceasefire holds as long as we continue to talk, which is ridiculous. But Israel has proven, as you've already mentioned, that they're more than willing to go back in at full force if they don't feel like Hamas is negotiating in good faith. And let's be honest, Hamas is never going to be negotiating in good faith.
But what concerns me is that this is a Trump-mandated ceasefire. I told you 2 weeks ago when the Iran war ended that we were going to see a Gaza ceasefire. It was just as plain as the writing on the wall, because Trump wants his Nobel Peace Prize. He wants to be the guy who brought all of this to an end. And my concern is that we see a repeat of what we saw after the Iran war, where Israel were about to launch jets, and apparently jets were even in the air. And Trump came out with his famous, they don't know what they're fucking doing, ordered Israel to turn the jets around, and Israel did. You know, Trump has an enormous amount of leverage here. My biggest concern is that if Hamas don't play ball, because Trump wants this ceasefire to hold, he does the same thing again, and that's really dangerous. So there's a real risk there. I'm not saying that's definitely going to happen, but it's certainly a risk.
Well, Andrew, you say that Trump has an enormous amount of leverage, but you mean leverage over Israel. And he does, among other things, for having stepped in Iran. You know who he doesn't seem to have leverage over? Hamas and Qatar. So Israel, no matter, like, listen, right now it does seem like Bibi is ready to agree to anything that Trump wants because he knows what the repercussions will be if he doesn't. However, he can't unilaterally create a ceasefire, okay? That's not going to go to any good place, nor will we get any hostages back, nor will we make any progress. So yes, there's a lot of pressure, but Hamas has not gotten the memo.
Well, I mean, he can unilaterally declare a ceasefire. He did in Iran. That's exactly what happened in Iran. Trump dropped the bombs on Fordo and then was like, right, stop. So, and also, you know, we've seen his posts on Truth Social about how outrageous it is that Bibi's going through the courts, and you sense that there is political pressure being put on Israel, maybe to stop those legal actions against Bibi as well. So there's a lot of moving parts here. You know, Qatar have shown that they can release hostages at will. They did it with their Dan Alexander. They just said, "Hey, release that guy," and Hamas did. So there's definitely traction that Hamas has. That Qatar has on Hamas. What extent will Trump leverage that? We don't know. And what incentive is there for Hamas to give up all the hostages? That's the real killer thing here. Like, the second they give up all the hostages, that's all of their leverage done. This war's over a year ago if the hostages hadn't been taken. It's over 18 months ago if the hostages haven't been taken. Yeah.
Sure.
So, you know, Hamas has no incentive to release the hostages. And the bigger question is, I think, what leverage, you know, what are they going to be given in exchange? Because look, there has to be a compromise here. If you want the hostages back, you have to compromise with Hamas, and there's no real way around that problem. So the big worry for me is what that compromise looks like, because that could go really badly. And the fact that they're treating Hamas, and they have treated Hamas for 21 months, as a viable actor that gets a say in this process is because of the hostages, but it does mean that they're in a much, much stronger position than they otherwise would be.
Nah, well, I mean, so first thing I really have to do is remind myself that I vowed after the B2 bombing not to second guess Trump's strategies, because what he says and what he does tends to be two different things. So these are like everything following are my not second guesses. First thing, you and I have disagreed numerous times that I believe in a maximum pressure military campaign until Hamas surrenders, because you're right that they have no incentive to surrender unless they are quite literally forced to do so. There's a few ways that they could be forced to do so. One is a maximum military pressure campaign. One is the taking care of the food, right? Like, so literally choking them off, because when you choke them off of the food, A, they can't eat, but B, they can't hold their own people hostage, and C, they can't sell it to fund their military machine, because that funding right now is not going to come from Iran. I don't know how much is coming from Qatar. Maybe you know. But the third one that that has been posited, and I like it in theory, though I don't know how viable it really is the concept of withholding all reconstruction aid until the demands are met, i.e., all the hostages are released. Again, that's always going to be a sticking point. I can see them even holding on to one because they know what one is worth. And also, going into exile. Now, there's only one problem. I like it in theory, except for the fact that the United Nations and just the nations are obsessed with pouring money into Gaza, no matter what. Qatar has given tens of millions of dollars to them, since 10/7. And also, like, all the countries who are like, yeah, we're going to defund UNRWA, like a minute later, they're sliding money under the table or even across the table back to UNRWA. People cannot restrain themselves, even if it meant getting back the hostages and restoring order and peace to the Gaza region.
I mean, there's something called cash transfer, which you might not be aware of. The UN only acknowledges two terrorist organizations, and that's ISIS and Al Qaeda. So there's no rule under the UN that says they can't give money direct to Hamas. And I'm working on a piece at the moment with a buddy of mine who's actually doing the hard yards. I'm just writing it. He's doing the research, and some of the amounts of money that have flowed into Gaza from the UN as cash transfers is absolutely unbelievable. So that's a little teaser for you as to some work that's coming out hopefully later in the year.
That's too much of a tease. Can you give one figure? One.
No, not right now.
Okay.
I'm still putting together a thesis and that sort of thing. But
Okay.
Zach is convinced he's uncovered a huge amount. So let's go with that. But anyway, that doesn't matter. The point is here that is Hamas a legitimate actor in this conversation or not? And at the moment, the way things are going, we have to say actually they probably are. And I agree with you that actually what Israel's been doing since the ceasefire ended last time is what they would have done in October 2023 had they been allowed to by the White House, by the Biden presidency. They were obviously stopped from doing that, which means they're kind of fighting the war they wanted to fight 21 months ago, after 21 months of destruction and damage to Israel's international reputation and all of the unpleasantness that's happened over the last nearly 2 years. And yet, because of that delay of them starting what they want to do, which is essentially sever Hamas from the people of Gaza. They're severing Hamas's lever of control over the people by removing the food aid. They are severing Hamas's physical control by empowering rival clans to be armed and take Hamas's place. But it's 21 months too late, and it's becoming incredibly difficult in the face of this international pressure and the fact that Trump is so keen on a ceasefire. So everything is happening now. It feels a huge rush, and it would be an enormous loss for Israel. I think an enormous, strategic defeat, and we can say it in those blunt terms, if they were forced to start withdrawing again from Gaza because of this ceasefire deal, after controlling 65% of it, after taking over the aid, after empowering the rival clans, to have to then roll back on all that for 60 days of pause and then potentially have to go again in 60 days time, that just feels wrong to me. It feels like we're at a tipping point now, and this feels to me like the wrong time for a ceasefire, notwithstanding the fact that the hostages have been underground for 600 plus days, and the sooner we can get them home the better. There's priority. Is it destroying Hamas, or is it getting hostages home?
Yeah. I agree so much about the withdrawal. I don't understand why we don't do it the old-fashioned way, where you fight until the other person surrenders. Israel, it's like they go in hard, they take control over an area, they place their finger in the dam until the next negotiation, and they're like, Hamas, pull my finger. Are you old enough to get that reference? Oh, okay. Not as, yeah, not as good as my Simpsons imitation. But anyway, you pull out the finger, the dam breaks, Hamas floods back in, we start all over again. But Andrew, I have to be honest. I have tremendous hope, if not in Trump, and I'm trying not to second guess Trump. I'm trying. But I have tremendous hope in Ambassador Mike Huckabee. So he and Netanyahu, they formed a team Huckabee, right? And I truly believe that they are 100% on the same page when it comes to Israel. And here's the way that I sort of see it. Like, so Trump is the face of America, obviously. Huckabee,
You lucky devils! What a handsome face.
and Huckabee is the voice of God who blesses America. I mean, he comes from a very, very Christian, very religious viewpoint that this is the chosen people, this is the chosen people's land, and it must be salvaged. I think that Trump, honestly, when it comes to Israel, listens to him more than anyone else. I have never seen him push back on Huckabee like he has against Witkoff and everybody else who is involved in this negotiation. Agree? Disagree?
No, I mean, I think you are forgetting that ahead of any loyalty to Israel comes loyalty to Donald Trump, and that please surprise trumps all. And also, I think you can second guess Trump all day long. He does exactly what he said on the tin. I think he literally does exactly what he says he's going to do. And everything is framed through a deal where he goes maximalist and then rose back to a position that is amenable to the other side, and not the horrible position that he presents first. It's all fairly kind of formulaic, if I'm honest. But with this one,
Well,
I told you 2 weeks ago Trump was going to want a ceasefire in Gaza, and you can tell there's outside pressure here for the ceasefire because it just makes no sense to do it now. It just makes no sense unless you decide that absolutely your number one priority is getting the hostages back, which is a position I've got a huge amount of sympathy for. Militarily, it makes no sense to do this now. Hamas are on the ropes. Israel's boot is on their throat again, and just as it was last summer, and they were forced to stop again. You can tell how much Hamas are hurting by the disinformation campaign that's raging on social media right now, by the way people are screeching and making up allegations of war crimes and all this nonsense that's flying around the place. That only really reaches these peaks and crescendos when Hamas is under real pressure. And so the idea that Israel now has to back off, only to have to do this potentially again in 60 days' time, militarily, this is madness, frankly, absolute madness. So that's how we know the external pressure is coming in on Israel to do this, because it just doesn't make military sense. Hamas are crumbling. The IDF don't even have to put troops through if they don't need to anymore. And then there is an argument coming out of the IDF that they've achieved everything they can militarily, which I also agree with in many ways. Like, for example, there was an airstrike, I think it was yesterday or the day before, 27th of June, I remember, because it was my birthday. And they killed a 13-year-old boy and his mother. And now the 13-year-old boy was online. His family posted that he was a martyr. They posted that he was a runner for Hamas. We know he was a combatant. If you're 13 years old, you're still a combatant if you're taking part in hostility. So everything around it looks like a legal strike. But militarily, what are you doing? Why are you burning missiles like that to kill a 13-year-old runner? This is not achieving a strategic aim. Yeah, it's tactically killing a Hamas goon, but militarily that doesn't make any sense. So there is a strong argument that they've done everything they can militarily. But what that means now is all they have to do is just hold it and let the civil aspects of seizing the aid and empowering the clans take effect under the umbrella of IDF protection. And that's working. And to stop now and pause for 60 days is just military madness to me.
You don't think there's anything to be said for the demoralization? I mean, when we're talking about legitimate targets, we're talking about legitimate targets. And by the way, just because there was a child militant that was killed in war does not mean that they're not still going up to the top brass. They are. There are still people at the top of Hamas that still need to be removed. It's not like this 13-year-old kid is running the place. Israel is going after much more strategic targets. And I also want to say that there's a lot of people.
So I'm just going to jump in real quick. But on that,
absolutely,
you need to leave somebody alive to talk to. That's the other thing here. If you want the hostages back, you need somebody alive to communicate with. So from a military perspective, like, there's not much more to be done. You know, the real defeat of Hamas is going to come from the people of Gaza and the rival clans to Hamas, and the fact that Hamas has lost all its levers of control. That's where, we need to move from kind of war fighting to the next phase. And this feels like the right moment, and it feels like it's working.
Well, so okay. Let's talk about these rival clans, because there's a lot of talk about them, and primarily, I guess, Abu Shabab is being like thrown around, that that Israel is basically working hand in hand with them to help them to fight against Hamas. So who is Abu Shabab? They're a drug trafficking Bedouin militia group. Like, what could possibly go wrong with that? I don't think that there's any like easy answer to any of this. And keep in mind that, like, every time they say, okay, well, they should just hand it to fill in the blank, Egypt. Egypt doesn't want it. They should give it to a joint council of the UAE, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, name the people. They don't want it. Nobody wants Gaza. Nobody wants the people of Gaza. They've learned over time that when you have these people in your midst, they are a radicalized population, and nobody wants them in their midst. So it's easy to say that these tribes, these clans within Gaza are going to be able to take over. But I see that becoming nothing but a civil war of a bunch of like rival savage factions that all just start killing each other. How are we gonna?
So
No,
you make reconstruction contingent on peace. That's how you get around that problem. And if they don't, if they end up with a bloody civil war, you just say, hey, cool, you guys get on with it, scrap it out in the rubble. Let us know when you're ready to talk, and then we can talk about reconstruction. That's how you do it. The odds of there being a pro-Israel government in Gaza is non-existent after this war. It's not going to happen.
But I don't think the odds of withdrawing aid is going to happen either, or withholding, not withdrawing. I think, again, the UN is obsessed with rebuilding Gaza without contingencies, and to rebuild Gaza as soon as possible. In fact, even within the current Witkoff proposal is a stipulation to start bringing in heavy equipment to start the rebuilding process. So it's a nice theory, and these are all nice theories. I just don't understand how practically these are going to work.
Yeah, well, like I said, my suggestion of withholding aid till they sort their lives out isn't in the process, isn't in there. So that's my hypothesis rather than something that I think is going to happen. But that's how you do it if you want to. And look, you say nobody wants Gazans. Well, Gazans want Gaza. Let them have Gaza. The only alternative is shifting them elsewhere. And like you say, no one wants them. Where are they going to go? And neither should you. And if Israel wants to lose the support of people like me, ethnically cleansing Gaza is the way to do it, because that's completely immoral and wrong. And they, nobody should support that. Frankly, I've got no time for the suggestion whatsoever. So you need to do something with the people who are in Gaza, and there's the way to do that. And look, the strategic goal here isn't to create a government that suddenly loves Israel. It's to get rid of Hamas, and that's what the consistent goal has been since 7th of October. So as long as you achieve that, you can back off Gaza, say, here's your reconstruction. We're keeping an eye on you. Think about attacking us again, and we're coming straight back. And you've seen what happens when we do that. So, there's no good outcome here. There's no like kind of World War II immediate kind of take control and reconstruct the place, you can only deal with the cards you've got in your hand, and they're not great, frankly, and the idea of there being a great outcome just isn't on the table right now.
Okay, I want to just quickly, or whatever, quickly-ish, comment on this concept of ethnic cleansing, because I'm not a fan of these buzzwords because they don't apply in any way to what's going on, nor is Israel asking to ethnically cleanse Gaza. So a few things. One is, this has nothing to do with you, you know this, but not everybody understands this, that occupation and annexing are two different things. So right now there's a military occupation that Israel has to be in there to ensure that there's some sort of protective mechanism. Okay, they're not trying to take over Gaza. If they wanted Gaza, they wouldn't have unilaterally withdrawn in 2005. And if they wanted Gaza, they could have taken it on literally any given Tuesday. This is not a goal of Israel. It's not a goal of Egypt. Egypt used to have control of Gaza. They ceded it. Not only did they cede it, but the Rafah crossing on the Egyptian side has not one wall, but two walls and all sorts of barriers to stop people from coming in or coming out. I don't think anybody's trying to come out of Egypt into Gaza, but except for maybe terrorists. And so, like, stack on that the fact that there's never been a war where refugees have not been allowed to leave. I mean, what, 4 million refugees left Ukraine, and zero, basically, effectively zero. I mean, there have been very few.
There's a couple of 100,000 who paid their way, bribed their way out at the start of the war in Gaza, but that's about it.
Is it a few 100,000? Okay.
Yeah, just over 100,000, I think.
Okay, so I think that we can't discount the fact that in a normal war, citizens want to be safe and want to leave. Okay, so they are being trapped inside. It's not ethnic cleansing to say that we have an opportunity and we're willing to help you to get out of harm's way. And by the way, if we can get the citizens out of harm's way, then we'll have an easier battle with Hamas and we can rebuild and bring them back. That was the Trump plan. I don't even know if anybody outside of Israel is pursuing the Trump plan anymore. When I say outside of Israel, that includes Trump, who seems to have completely forgotten about Mayor Gaza.
I mean, that's Trump's style, though. It's that maximalist position. It's like, we're going to clear it out, create casinos, and then they maybe be able to come back in time. Maybe, who knows? And obviously, the Kahanist extreme right wing in Israel will love that plan, and their version of it does involve ethnic cleansing, where the Palestinians can't come back. So, and it was to that I was referring. And my key point is that it's their territory. They're the ones responsible for fixing it. And that's the bottom line, is that this is a Palestinian problem. It needs a Palestinian solution. And, if you go to my Substack, I have written a very extensive article about how you do that.
Yes.
And it involves that financial motivation, and say, look, hey, play nice and you get Dubai, play nasty and you see what happens. Like, what do you want? And actually, the second something like the Hebron, the Emirates of Hebron thing actually works, and they see that if you acknowledge Israel and join the Abraham Accords, you suddenly get really, really rich, really, really fast. That's a hell of an incentive. That is a hell of an incentive that they don't have at the moment. And that's how you build peace long term. And it also gets rid of the problem of Palestinianism, which is that whole river to the sea bullshit. Like, Israel's not going anywhere. It just isn't. Like, they have
Right.
F-16s and F-35s. They've just shown you what happens when you try the river to the sea by force. It doesn't work out well for anyone. So just accept it, and then we can all work together to create a better future for everyone, and live side by side in financially, economically, and diplomatically beneficial harmony, which is all a bit hippie, but that's your long-term aim over 20-30 years. We're not talking, by the end of 2025 everyone's going to be delighted. Obviously that's not going to happen. And then there's things that need to happen there too. Like, there needs to be controls, there needs to be mechanisms by which you can effectively cut out the areas that don't play nicely, and there need to be concessions on Israel's side about the settler movement and all that controversial stuff. So there's a million reasons why this couldn't work, but show me a better option. They've tried monolithic Palestinian and Israeli negotiations since 1967 maybe, and it hasn't worked. So let's try something different outside the box, and something that does have at least a historical echo in things like the UAE, where they managed to bring together disparate emirates to become one diplomatic entity that is incredibly wealthy now. Okay, so there's no oil in Palestine, so you need to find a different financial lever, but there's so many things that could go really well with this idea, and it's about finding a way past the roadblocks that are obviously thrown up.
100% agree. I just want to mention two quick things about Hebron and also about the Kahani group. First of all, the Mayor Kahani followers are a very fringe group, but from what I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I was just listening to a report about this, the sheiks, I guess they are, in Hebron, who proposed this, supposedly, from what I heard in literally just today in an interview, are also a fringe group, that they don't actually have the power to create this kind of a deal. But one more thing to keep in mind, Andrew, and this is where Jew Shana is going to come in a little harder than not Jew Andrew, is that we also have to keep in mind that the suggestion of taking over Hebron, which has a lot of historical implications for the Jewish people, is I like that they're willing. Of course, I love that they say they're willing to not only recognize Israel, but they actually said the words like "Israel's here to stay." I love that, but it's also like, and we're just going to take this little like historical area that like is very, very meaningful to you, and we're just going to make it ours in the process. So, okay, talk amongst yourselves. I think this is going to work really well. Now, I have to say, historically, Israel has been willing to give up anything, including the Sinai, which is bigger than Israel itself, to Egypt for peace. So I do think that ultimately, if it proves to be a viable offer, that Israel would be silly not to at least try it. There's always going to be a security apparatus in place in case it should swing the wrong way. So I think that so Judea and Samaria are such a unique issue compared to Gaza. And one thing that you mentioned in your 14,000 word
magnum opus, yeah.
Opus, which I've talked about before, and obviously it's not just me, is a multiple state solution. It's silly to think that Gaza and let's call it the West Bank, because we're talking about like a potential Palestinian state, but in my world this is Judea and Samaria. They don't have the same interests. They don't have the same population. They don't have the people in Gaza will not accept the PA, right? Although the people in Judea and Samaria may very well accept Hamas, but we can't make that a viable option. So perhaps if we start with a bunch of emirates to the east, and start sort of carving up Judea and Samaria a little bit. And then, Gaza at some point, what this will do is it will create at least some sort of viable 2-state or multiple state, 100-state, 1,000,000-state, 5-state, 8-state solution that the Saudis, for example, could say, oh, okay, we're on the path. Now we can normalize. I'm a big believer in the Abraham Accords, in creating peace from the outside, pushing in rather than peace pushing out with war.
Yeah, and I agree. And I think the other kind of maxim to remember is, don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. And that there's not, if it's not the ideal solution, actually something that's better than we have now is progress. and that can be built upon in due course and in time to kind of hopefully find a way to a peaceful solution to all this. And sorry, my dog's just decided to join us.
Oh, show us your doggy.
You'll see Vixen. There you go. There she is.
She has nothing to add to the conversation.
No, she's pro-Palestine. She's very awful. She's got a toy watermelon that she runs around with all the time. You know, we have debates about it. It's not great.
Yeah, that pally dog is not welcome on this show.
I'm only kidding. I'm only kidding. She's solid.
I know you're kidding. You wouldn't have a pally dog. But I don't want to sort of skate over the question of the hostages, because this is something that really, really plagues my personal psyche and many people's psyche all day, every day. I mean, I'm not just talking about theoretically. I mean, all day, every day. It just keeps repeating and repeating and repeating. And so let's go back to Trump. And now, you know, you're saying he does what he says. I'm saying he doesn't always do what he says. Sometimes he surprises people, like bombing you. But he says stuff like you said, like the Mirror Gaza idea, and then forgets about it. Like, what happened to no dribs and drabs? Like he's like, oh well, let's get 8 people out. How are we going to choose 8 people? And by the way, the fact that they're like saying so definitively that there are 20 alive breaks my heart, because they're supposed to be 2 or 3, one of whom is Bipin Joshi, whose family was on my Yoga War podcast, he's the Nepalese agricultural worker who they haven't had a single sign of life since October 7th. But there's also been, believe me, I'm in constant touch with the family. There's been no information at all as to his whereabouts. Now it seems like they're assuming by their talking points that he must be deceased. That's heartbreaking, and it's heartbreaking for the family because there's no proof either way, and it's a sad assumption. But so I do believe, just to beat the dead horse, Andrew, because I have to, that if we have a relentless military campaign at some point, if Iran is cut off and Qatar stops giving money and Hamas literally can't feed itself and they can't pay their militants and they're all being killed, that at some point they're going to cry uncle. I do believe, unfortunately, it may very well be at the expense of the hostages. I pray and pray.
Well, that's the counterpoint, isn't it? If I'm Hamas in that situation, I go on camera with a gun to a hostage's head and say, "Hey, stop, or I kill them," and I'll release the video to the world. You know, that's, you know, you got to remember there's always another side to the fight. And Hamas do have a say, and their say is, "Hey, if you get to the point where we look like we're going to lose, then guess what happens, kids? We're going to just start killing your people." Because, you know, we're dealing with psychopaths here. We're dealing with psychopaths who place no value on the lives of the hostages other than the bargaining advantages that they confer to them.
Sure.
So, you know, look, bottom line is, if you have a deal where hostages are released, that is objectively a good thing. And we can park military strategy and just celebrate the fact that people have come home. And I'm here for that. It doesn't give us any answers to the long-term security of the state of Israel or any solution to Gaza that makes life any better for people who live in Gaza. And that is objectively a bad thing. But you've got to weigh out which is the lesser of two evils. And that's not my decision to make. It's not your decision to make. It's unfortunately Bibi's decision to make. And we'll see where that goes. But those are the options. Those are the options.
But here we go again. It's not Bibi's decision. He can't make this decision himself. It's also up to Hamas. And Hamas knows that the more they reject the offers, the more the pressure comes down on Bibi. And it's a really, really frustrating cycle, because he has accepted every proposal basically since last May. And then Hamas comes back with like we love it. We have a positive response, I think is what they said this time, with just a few little changes.
In
You
our
don't get the
favor.
hostages, you withdraw, we stay in power. You know, I love things like and for 10 hours a day you'll have no aerial surveillance, and for 12 hours a day on exchange days you'll also have no aerial surveillance. Like, clearly there's no ulterior like motives there. Like, who even asks that? Like, what you're literally saying is, we're going to do bad things for the extra 10 hours a day, or on days where we release, without the media circus. And by the way, they've promised no media circus before. What's Israel going to say? We don't want people back because you're giving the media circus? I mean, they may not. They didn't for Don Alexander and for a few of the corpses that they returned.
Well, they stopped doing that. I think they stopped doing that because they realised that presentationally it was backfiring on them. People were horrified by it, and I think Hamas went, "Oh, PR, come on, lads, PR. Let's row back on this because we don't want to do our reputations any damage after we've successfully managed to present ourselves as a victorious resistance movement who defeated the Yahud and the strength of the Americans."
Yeah, well, I see what you're saying. I didn't see it actually negatively affecting their PR at all. Like, there might have been like a knee-jerk reaction, and then it's back to, oh, did I go black? Then it's back to, but let me see if I can get my camera back on. This YouTube live, I'm telling you.
Now you look like you're about to give me details about President Nixon's tape recordings in some car park in Washington.
Oh no. Okay. Well, I'm not quite that old, Andrew. But then, you know, we've got the exchange, right? I mean, I just can't believe that Barghouti is back on the table. Are we really, after the Sinwar fiasco, considering sending this mass murderer back to Gaza to mastermind the next 10/7? Or, you know, honestly, the other option, Andrew, because I have different opinions on how closely Trump and Bibi are coordinating. That what I'm going to say first is not that weird. That the only reason Israel went to Doha is to prove that they're not the ones sinking the deal, but that perhaps like they're, because every single one of these stipulations put forth by Hamas, every single one is a non-starter. So I cannot see Israel saying, oh, okay, we'll do all those things, give up all of our gains, and, you know, just give us half the people back. That's cool. And I believe that Trump is with Bibi and saying, go to the table. This isn't going to work. And then, just like Iran, you're going to be able to go in and finish the job, but I want you to finish the job.
Okay. Well, I admire your positivity and your optimism in that case. I think that will probably be a good note to finish on, because look, you know, the fact is that, you know, all we can do is speculate at this point. And I think a worthy note to finish on is that if it brings hostages home, I'm in favour of it on a purely personal and human level, because they've been away too long, and you know, bringing them home is a vitally important thing to do. So if nothing else good comes from this deal, at least hopefully some hostages will return to their families alive, and then that's really the most important thing of all, as far as I'm concerned, on that personal level.
Please God, but Andrew, we also have to keep in mind 882 IDF soldiers who have given their lives, thousands who have given their limbs and have suffered irreversible, whether it's brain damage, spinal damage, physical damage, mental damage, PTSD that's going to last a lifetime. That this can't all be in vain. Yes, I understand that a military life in war is different than a civilian life, and there's not, at this point, I would probably give my own life to break. Not probably, I would happily give my own life to give back the hostages, but we cannot retreat and have all of those lives given in vain.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, I've had friends die and lose limbs completely in vain, thanks to a Trump negotiated deal with a terrorist group. So you'll forgive me if I retain a little bit more skepticism, but I agree. I would much prefer the outcome in Gaza to be better than the outcome in Afghanistan, and God willing, it will be. Um, so yeah, that was us this week. We kind of went in deep into some stuff, and I hope you enjoyed it. Please do like and subscribe. We're here every Monday, same time. It's midday Pacific time. It's 8 p.m. UK time, and it's somewhere else in the world. But it's on the hour every Monday. And please do like, subscribe, and actually please do comment if anything we've said tonight motivates you to say something. We love to hear from people, and we really appreciate it when people jump up on the timeline and give us the chance to have a bit of interaction with you. So thank you for watching this, and Shana.
Yeah, let me. That's my cue. Guys, also don't forget to hit the bell, because that way you will receive notifications anytime we have a new episode. There may also be special briefings in between our Monday updates, so it's always worth it to hit that bell. Andrew, as they say in the old country, l'chaim.
Wow, cheers to you, my friend.
Okay, let's see how long it takes me to figure out how to press the button again.
Yeah, we'll just be here like grinning awkwardly, like, yeah.